Good morning, delegates. We'll be starting soon, so please take your seats. Thank you. Good morning, delegates. It is a pleasure to see you again. And I already thank you that you are bringing today a strong spirit of compromise and flexibility, and I want to already thank you for this, because I know we have CRPs to go through, and I know that we'll work together to get the best outcome. So now I'll open up this session of Working Group 2. Today we'll begin with reports from groups that met since our last session of the Working Group. First, I would like to invite one of the co-chairs of the contact group on synthetic biology to report on progress. Germany, you have the floor. Please give the floor to Germany.
Good morning, everybody. Madam Chair, the contact group on synthetic biology had its last meeting Wednesday evening. I would like to take the opportunity to thank Ms. Ntakatseni Chidada for co-chairing and the Secretariat for the great support we had. We had also support from a small group that was facilitated by Mr. Tim Strabler from New Zealand. I must say, Chair, that the progress on the discussion during this small group was key in setting the path for the discussion during the contact group. I would therefore like to thank, on behalf of my co-chair and I, Mr. Strabler, as well as all parties who exchanged views and provided options in moving forward. With this, I'm pleased to report, on behalf of my co-chair and I, that the meeting of the contact group was successful, and that with support from all parties and their spirit of compromise, we were able to produce a clean CRP. I would like to highlight, Chair, that we spent long hours discussing and exchanging views, but in the end, the spirit of compromise prevailed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and thank you to your co-chair for the hard work that you did in this contact group. As you may recall, we had 2 meetings of the Friends of the Chair on climate change. I then converted the group into a contact group, which met on Wednesday, and now I'd like to invite one of the co-chairs, Sigurdur Svensson of Iceland, to provide us with a report. Iceland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On Thursday, 15th December from 10 to 11 a.m., the contact group met for the second time as a contact group after 2 previous meetings of the Friends of the Chairs, as you just rightly notified. The contact group was co-chaired by Rita Sahul of Costa Rica and myself. The objective was to finish the consideration of the non-paper started the previous evening. There were 4 outstanding issues. The group managed to resolve one of them, but no consensus was reached on the other issues, which are currently in square brackets in the CRP. Because the group was not able to reach a compromise on these issues, the group felt it could not go forward in negotiating this text. As a result, the whole draft decisions were put in a square bracket. I wish to thank all the parties who joined the group for their efforts in reaching an agreement. Madam Chair, we are ready to continue to serve you and the conference of the parties on this issue if you so wish. On behalf of both of us, I would like to use this opportunity for the trust you have to facilitate these discussions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and your co-chair, and we appreciate the significant work that you did in this group. So we appreciate, thank you. So now, just a minute, please, let me consult. I will now like to invite the facilitator of the Friends of the Chair on Nagoya Protocol Item 15 on specialized international access and benefit sharing instruments in the context of Article 4, Paragraph 4 of Nagoya Protocol to report on progress. I give the floor to the EU. Just a minute, we are looking for the chair. Hold a minute, please. Thank you for your patience. The chairs of this group and the group on health are not in the room at this time, so we will postpone their reports and we will move ahead. So therefore, we will now begin considering the CRPs. The first CRP for consideration today will be that of CRP 11 on COP item 27, synthetic biology. However, before we begin to consider this CRP, I would like to give the floor to the World Health Organization to deliver a statement. World Health Organization, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The WHO and the CBD Secretariat have a long history of collaboration on biodiversity and health. particularly since COP10 and the establishment of the joint work program with CBD Secretariat, and we welcome a strengthening of this collaboration. On this particular agenda item, the WHO has the pleasure of making a short intervention on the important cooperative work between the CBD and WHO, particularly within the framework of the UN Biorisk Working Group, which WHO co-chairs with the UN Office for Disarmament Affairs, UNODA. Recognizing the need to improve internal United Nations coherence and to strengthen interagency cooperation in light of emerging biological threats and evolving pathogens, the United Nations Biorisk Working Group was established in August of 2020 by decision of the Secretary General's Executive Committee. The working group aims to bring together policy, normative, and technical expertise to further develop a clear understanding of capacities, mechanisms, roles, and responsibilities, and to harmonize them within the UN system in order to strengthen the international community's preparedness and response to emergencies of biological origin, whether natural, accidental, or deliberate. Over the past 2 years, the working group has rallied the UN community around biorisk, strengthening partners' engagement and leveraging their diverse capacities. The system-wide coordination it has fostered is a major achievement for the UN as a whole. Today, there are 29 international entities participating in the working group, including organizations outside the UN system, the World Organization for Animal Health, and Interpol. Activities carried out by the working group include developing and piloting aspects of a knowledge exchange platform to foster interoperability and knowledge sharing. This includes establishing a staff exchange program to foster collaboration and build internal capacity. The CBD was the organization piloting this program by sending one of their staff to WHO headquarters. This exchange has deepened the cooperation between our two organizations in this area of work and opened new possibilities for joint activities, including around the One Health approach that focuses on addressing risks where they occur at the human, animal, plant, and ecosystem interface. Human health, ecosystem health, and animal and plant health are interdependent. The anthropogenic impact on ecosystems can cause biodiversity loss and a disrupted biome. In addition to other risks, a collapse of an ecosystem can also constitute a biological risk, as much as, and possibly more, than the deliberate misuse of biological agents or technology. This is why the collaboration with the Convention on Biological Diversity is so vital. And we thank the CBD Secretariat for their invaluable contributions to the UN Biorisk Working Group, among other areas of work. The World Health Organization acknowledges the importance of the work conducted by the CBD and would like to strengthen existing collaboration across many areas, particularly focusing on tackling two areas of concern under this agenda item, namely emerging technologies, including synthetic biology and digitally sequenced information. While technological advances make it exponentially easier to fight outbreaks and future pandemics, they can also lead to misuse with potentially catastrophic consequences. Additionally, the threat of a new emerging infectious disease caused by changes in interactions at the human, animal, plant, and environment interface. Both these areas are priorities for the World Health Organization. As testified by the work we are conducting, of which a notable example is the recently published Global Guidance Framework for the Responsible Use of the Life Sciences, Mitigating Biorisks and Governing Dual-Use Research. The guidance uses a One Health approach to understand and emphasize the importance of biorisk management. It provides a set of values and principles to guide decision-making, and it sets out a practical 5-step approach for implementing the framework. These issues also call for greater cooperation across and beyond the UN system. And WHO hopes that through the UN Biorisk Working Group and other expert working groups, we can build stronger relationships and networks that will enable us as a system to prevent, mitigate, and respond to future emergencies. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, World Health Organization. Now we can turn our attention to the CRP. So the CRP before us is CRP 11 on synthetic biology. I would like to remind all delegates that the text before you is the outcome of long hours of discussion, 3 contact group sessions, and cordial compromise. Since the text has been negotiated in detail, I would kindly appeal to all parties to not reopen the negotiated text. I would also like to indicate that editorial changes have been made on paragraphs 3, 4, and 9C of the CRP. That is 3, 4, and 9C of the CRP. With this in mind, I will now open the CRP for consideration, and we'll go paragraph by paragraph, starting with the preambular paragraph. So I imagine we have it before us already, CRP 11. So therefore, we see the first one, which is the Conference of the Parties. I'll take that together with the second one, which is recalling decisions. I see no request for the floor. That is approved. Recalling also subsidiary body. I see no request for the floor. That is approved. Noting the analysis. I see no request for the floor. That is approved. Recalling decision. I see no request for the floor. That is approved. Recalling also. I see no request for the floor. That is approved. Noting the relevance. I see no request for the floor. That is approved. Recalling paragraphs. I see no request for the floor. That is approved. Recognizing the importance. I see no request for the floor. That is approved. Welcoming the outcomes. I see no request for the floor. That is approved. Section A, considerations for new and emergent issues and associated criteria. Para 1, recognizes the various. I see no request to the floor. That is approved. Para 2 also recognizes. I see no request to the floor. That is approved. Para 3 notes. I see 2 requests for the floor, New Zealand and the Republic of Korea. New Zealand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to acknowledge the comments made by the chair of the co-chair of the contact group, and I thank him for those comments. However, I would like to say that it truly was a group effort, and I admire the spirit and willingness of compromise that people had in all these sessions. And with that, I will move on to my actual substantive comment, which is the editorial change in paragraph 3. After horizon scanning, comma, it reads as well as. The original language was nor. I would simply like to, I think that was relatively important towards the end of our discussions in contact group, and would like to discuss whether or not parties want to retain nor, or we can go with that. I think my preference, New Zealand's preference, would be for nor. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. Regarding this very heavily negotiated text, if the editorial changes are of any concern, we will revert. So then we can be, instead of as well as, it can say nor. So it will say nor on future. Let us hear from Republic of Korea, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the sake of enhancing the clarity, Korea would like to add also that the paragraph 2 above. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I see. So then it would read, notes that paragraph 2 above. Is that Korea, please?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, so then I'll read it for you. Notes that paragraph 2 above should not be seen as setting a precedent regarding synthetic biology as a permanent item under the Convention, nor the permanent adoption of procedures established in this decision, such as horizon scanning, nor as on the future process to consider any proposed new and emergent issues. I see Brazil. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Here I'd like to support New Zealand in reverting to the original text, and also would like to support retaining the text that came from the contact group. I do understand the need I do understand perhaps that part of this paragraph makes a reference to paragraph 2, but then if you continue reading, it also refers to the permanent adoption of procedures established in this decision. So it also refers to the decision as a whole. I don't know if the suggestion by Korea would actually be more confusing than clear here in this paragraph. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Let's hear from the EU, and then we will look again at it and see to get the best way if we just revert to what it was originally. Thank you, EU. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would support Brazil's comment. Thank you.
Okay, so we are reverting back to the original. That's it. Let's see. We are going to get it for you and read it so that we have that in front of us. Just give me 1 minute, please. So just a question of clarity. Apparently, the original wording was, note that this should not be seen. The editor wanted to know what this was referring to, so therefore they suggested the above. So therefore, if we want to revert to the original, we would say that notes that this, but what are your thoughts about indicating what this is? As an editor had that concern, we need to be clear what we're saying. So may I get some thoughts on that? Notes that this should not be. Or we can stick with it and say notes that this should not be as seen as setting, and then it continues right up to horizon scanning, comma, nor on future processes. It seems that that is what is preferred. The original wording notes that this. It seems so. So therefore, we are reverting right back to the original. I see no request for the floor for reverting back to the original for para 3. Thank you. Para 3, reverting back to the original, is approved. We're moving to now section B, process. Let's look at para 4, establishes. I see Argentina. Argentina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, colleagues. Actually, I was going to request if you could have a final read of paragraph 3 as it was approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. So here we go. Notes that this should not be seen as setting a precedent regarding synthetic biology as a permanent item under the convention, nor on the permanent adoption of procedures established in this decision, such as horizon scanning, nor on future processes to consider any proposed new and emerging issues. All right, thank you. So it is approved, para 3. We're moving now to section B, para 4, establishes a process. I see no request for the floor. Para 4 is approved. Para 5 establishes a multidisciplinary. I see no request for the floor. Para 5 is approved. Para 6 decides that. I see no request for the floor. Para 6 is approved. Para 7 invites parties. I see no request for the floor. Para 7 is approved. Para 8 calls upon parties. I see no request for the floor. Para 8 is approved. Para 9, the preambulatory bit, requests the executive secretary. I see no request for the floor. The parametary bit of para 9 is approved. Para 9A, to convene online discussions. I see no request for the floor. Para 9A is approved. Para 9B, to synthesize the information. I see no request for the floor. Para 9B is approved. Para 9C, to convene at least. I see no request for the floor. Para 9C is approved. Para 9D, to prepare reports. I see no request for the floor. Para 9D is approved. Para 9E, to facilitate. I see no request to the floor. Para 9E is approved. Para 9F, to continue. I see no request to the floor. Para 9F is approved. Para 10, request the subsidiary. I see no request to the floor. Para 10 is approved. Para 11, also requests. I see no request to the floor. Para 11 is approved. Para 12, request the. I see no request to the floor. Para 12 is approved. Taking the annex as a whole with section A and section B. So we're taking the annex as a whole with section A and section B. This is before us now. I see no request to the floor. The annex is approved. Therefore, the entire CRP 11 is approved. Thank you. An L document will be prepared for consideration by the COP. So we take a break from considering CRPs and go back to the reports. Just give me a minute to see who is available to give their reports from their groups. 1 minute, please. Okay, so remember that we're all very busy trying to be in more than one place at the same time. So therefore, please excuse me, and we will continue going through the CRPs, and we will consider the reports for those CRPs prior to opening up that CRP. Is that agreeable? I do not see any requests to the floor, so I take it that that is agreeable to the parties. We will now open up CRP 12 on COP item 23, biodiversity and climate change. So bring that before you. We have before us a draft decision which is based on the recommendation coming from SAPSTA 23 as well as compromise text coming from the contact group. As we have heard from the report of the contact group on this item, there are few square brackets in the text, as well as brackets around the entire decision. It is my understanding that some parties wish to address these different issues in the square brackets together. At this time, if you so permit, I would like to hear the views of the parties regarding this decision, this draft decision on biodiversity and climate change. So at this point, I'm taking general views. Okay, I see Norway will break the ice, and I'm sure others will share their views. Norway, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We believe this is a good draft decision. It describes the challenges posed by climate change for biodiversity and the interlinkages between halting and reversing nature loss and implementing climate action. It is a guidance to us as parties to the CBD and those we work with. We have concerns with the bracketed paragraphs that you mentioned. Paragraph 8, that introduces a principle of common but differentiated responsibilities. This is not a principle that belongs to the CBD. The action we need to take to halt and reverse nature loss will be nationally specific. The causes for biodiversity loss and degradation of ecosystems is also specific and need to be addressed in that context. Developing countries should be supported in this and will continue to be supported. This convention has found that balance. The CBD reflects our common objectives and addresses our national responsibilities. Other multilateral environmental agreements have other approaches that fit the issue in question that they try to address. The Climate Change Convention addresses a global problem with a fundamentally different basis, the global accumulation of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and the consequences of this. And that problem calls for a different approach than the issues that we work with, protecting biodiversity, ensuring sustainable use and sharing benefits. The fact that this decision is about climate change does not call for a change in how we work under this convention. The decision is about how we, in a comprehensive way, can work alongside efforts to reduce consequences of climate change for biodiversity and ecosystems, under the targets and approaches that we use. For these reasons, we cannot accept the introduction of the CBDR principle into this decision, and it concerns the one paragraph. We also support the language on nature-based solutions in the chapeau and in para 9A. We strongly believe that we should find a solution so that COP15 can send a strong signal on the linkages between nature and climate in the right way. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Norway. I see this morning parties are not necessarily excited to share their views with us on the working group floor. Okay, I see Canada, and I'm sure others will join us. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We agree that a great deal of progress was made in the Friends of the Chair and the contact group on this issue. Canada supports Norway's intervention on the issue of common but differentiated responsibilities in paragraph 8. It must be remembered that CBDR was based on the nature of the climate change problem, where the pollution originating in certain countries had global impacts. Thus, there were common interests in protecting the climate system. And given the uneven nature of contribution to the problem, differentiated responsibility makes sense for climate change. However, biodiversity issues, while often transboundary, do not have the same nature or scope. CBDR does not make sense given the nature of the biodiversity crisis. While both the climate change regime and the CBD are instruments that tackle a problem states have a common interest in addressing, each MEA has its own inner balance and set of compromises, and a specific concept from one treaty cannot simply be imported into the regime of another. Both the CBD and the UNFCCC were negotiated at the same time. If one has the concept and the other doesn't, this was a very deliberate choice by the parties. I would therefore state that Canada's position is that CBDR is not found in the framework of the CBD, and we should therefore not be referring to it here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. We'll now hear from the EU. EU.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, colleagues. We think that this is a very important decision, in particular in the current context. We have worked a lot on this decision, and we welcome the references to the UNEA resolution, which in our view has been a milestone on the matter to clarify what nature-based solutions are and what they are not. We think in order to address biodiversity loss and climate change in an integrated manner, it is important to respect these outcomes of the UNEA resolution and really work together. With regards to the issues of the CBDR, we align with the interventions just made by Norway and Canada. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, EU. We'll now hear from Argentina, followed by Switzerland. Argentina, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Throughout our negotiation, yes, there is interpretation.
Is there interpretation?
Yes, there's interpretation. Thank you. Throughout our negotiation in all of the meetings, we've been very constructive and flexible. Argentina, for example, did not accept a reference to excessive nature-based solutions, but we went along with that at the request of the majority of developed countries. We believe that this led to an imbalance in the text, which really should be focusing on biodiversity and climate change. Despite that, we are prepared to be flexible and to go along with that proposal. However, when it comes to the issue of the transfer of resources. I'm sorry, says the Speaker, mobilization of resources. Not only would we reject has there been a rejection of the CBDR principle, but also making an express reference to the obligation of developed countries to provide resources to developing countries, as outlined in Article 20 of the CBD. For Argentina and for other developing countries which took part in the negotiations, if we want to have a decision on biodiversity and climate change, then that decision cannot fail to contain the concept of common but differentiated responsibilities. However, we believe that the position is not particularly constructive, in particular those countries who've rejected that inclusion. We reiterate the importance of having a decision on biodiversity and climate change given the status of the crisis, and we're prepared to work constructively. But once again, we would not accept any decision which did not contain this principle. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. We'll now hear from Switzerland, followed by Brazil, then Colombia. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, colleagues. Switzerland would like to support the interventions made by Norway, Canada, and the EU. And we also welcome the draft submitted by the chairs, in which we think the difficult issues that we've been discussing over the past week have been encapsulated and are still in brackets, unfortunately. And we would just want to say and call attention to that we do not think there should be a trade between a technical approach that's driving implementation and support for implementation, such as nature-based solutions, and then an overarching principle of the convention. So we actually see this issue of CBDR that shouldn't be discussed in this group. Rather, it is already in many parts of the preambular text and in the principles, and we think this is the place for that discussion. And we would really welcome trying to free up work and ongoing work in the area of nature-based solutions by trying to reach an agreement on how we can make compromises to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Switzerland. We'll now hear from Brazil, followed by Colombia, then South Africa. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Initially, I'd just like to start by thanking the co-chairs for their wonderful work they have done in this contact group and friends of the chair. I believe they really tried to build consensus around this resolution. We are also frustrated that we could not make more progress on this, because this is an important resolution for us all. On the topic of nature-based solutions and ecosystem approaches, we know how much debate there has been around the subject in our conversations, and we thought we were making progress there. Even though the text would reflect much more than what would have appreciated, we were keen on going there to accommodate the concerns that we have heard from our colleagues. And on the issue of the CBDR, this is not a trade between nature-based solutions or this principle that we do consider to be an overarching principle of this convention. And furthermore, I would also refer to that this is Principle 7 of the Rio Declaration, which of course inspires and informs multilateral environmental agreements. And more than that, as we have stated before, this is clearly stated in Article 20. Therefore, I would like to support what has been said by my colleague from Argentina. We do believe it is key, if we're going to have a decision on this, to have this reflected, especially in this resolution, in this decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. We'll now hear from Colombia, followed by South Africa, Honduras.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I would like to also thank the co-chairs and the Secretariat for their hard work, for their willingness to find middle ground and make us all progress and advance during these discussions. Their work was very valuable, and it is much, much appreciated. I would like to support the intervention made by my colleague from Argentina and what was said by Brazil, especially taking into account that if within this convention we can't see the interlinkages and the effects of climate change on biodiversity laws, where are we going to see them? If we don't understand them here, we don't understand them anywhere. We already know climate change is one of the main drivers for biodiversity loss and ecosystem loss. So I would like to reiterate and support my colleagues from Argentina and Brazil. Once again, thank you.
Thank you, Colombia. We'll now hear from Honduras, followed by the UK. Honduras, you have the floor.
Presidente. Thank you, Chair. We too would like to join Argentina, Brazil, and Colombia in what they said. We need to mobilize resources for the planet for it to be healed everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Honduras. We'll now hear from the UK, followed by Ethiopia and Uruguay. UK.
Thank you, Chair. And the UK would also like to give thanks to the co-chairs for their hard work on this item. We agree with the statements made by other parties that this is a really important decision addressing the linkages between biodiversity and climate. And we have heard from many parties over the past few days on the issue of how to reference nature-based solutions within this decision and on the issue of CBDR. Parties have been clear that we should not cherry-pick issues and that we cannot cut across the mandates of other international agreements. And on this, we completely agree. We want to be clear. We do not acknowledge that common but differentiated responsibilities is a general principle in international law. We do not agree that CBDR has a general application on climate outside of the UNFCCC and Paris. CBDR is a concept that relates specifically to how the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement will be implemented, and it is referenced in those agreements in a very specific and nuanced way. To include a reference only to CBDR within the context of this discussion would be to cherry-pick one of several principles underpinning the implementation of the UNFCCC for inclusion here. We therefore cannot support reflecting CBDR here in a way that would suggest a different application or meaning, or that would apply the principle in relation to other concepts, in particular, nature-based solutions and ecosystem-based approaches. This would go beyond what is agreed in the climate context and would simply create lack of clarity or disagreement around the purpose and meaning of this substantive decision. We would also like to affirm our view that Article 20 should be referenced in line with agreed text in capacity building and biodiversity and agriculture decisions. Briefly, regarding the issue of retaining the reference to nature-based solutions, we have heard from many parties that they see the inclusion of this concept within this decision as a significant compromise, but this we cannot accept. Parties have extensively discussed this term across numerous multilateral forums just this year and repeatedly agreed to this language. And we should not need to bring to ministers issues they've already decided on when we have so many other critical issues to resolve at this COP. Thank you.
Thank you, UK. We'll now hear from Ethiopia, followed by Uruguay, then South Africa. Ethiopia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the sake of negotiation, we have accepted nature-based solutions without having a clear understanding of it. Ethiopia supports the position of Argentina, Brazil, which is the inclusion of CBDR in the document. We believe that Without CBDR, the document will not achieve its goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ethiopia. We'll now hear from Uruguay, followed by South Africa. Uruguay, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We support the views expressed by other countries in GRULAC with the understanding that this is part of the principles of Rio, and it also applies in that sense to this Biodiversity Convention. At the same time, it's related to conventions in the draft decision based on nature, and we believe that they're excessive to have references to the concept in the draft decision, including taking into account the decision itself with regard to nature-based solutions, which recognizes that there are differences amongst countries with regard to this concept, and recommends to the Secretariat of UNEP to continue assessing norms, criteria, and new approaches in order to address these differences with a view to coming to a common understanding amongst member states. And in that regard, we think there's still a great deal of work to be done around this concept. And it would be important to highlight the different experiences of different countries and their science, to continue to understand the concept and to see how we can incorporate it into the Biological Diversity Convention. A general reference to this would be okay in this resolution, and the concept in the framework of thematic framework, but not specifically in the draft decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Uruguay. We'll now hear from South Africa, followed by Mexico, and then Australia. South Africa.
Thank you, Chair. In support of Ethiopia, Argentina, Brazil, and other GRULAC countries, Chair, Africa is amongst the geographical locations that is highly vulnerable to climate change, and some locations within the continent have been identified as hotspots in the context of the anticipated temperature increases. Given the latter, the 55 states that make up Africa would like to see a decision that captures the essence of the relationship between biodiversity and climate change, and also articulates clearly measures that build on recent robust science to inform effective responses. Ecosystem-based approaches is such an approach, and it is a concept that was adopted by parties to the convention and currently under implementation. So Africa, together with several other countries, has made a number of compromises to include nature-based solutions, despite the current decision missing the opportunity to thoroughly explore the relationship between biodiversity and climate change and articulate measures that will benefit biodiversity, conservation, and sustainable use in the face of climate change. Equally important is that time and space has been allocated under the UNEA process to thoroughly address the concept of nature-based solutions through an intergovernmental process. The aim of the latter is to eventually guide the implementation of nature-based solutions. Chair, despite all of the above, as I said earlier on, Africa is compromised on several aspects to accommodate the inclusion of nature-based solutions in the current decision. We are disappointed that the inclusion of an agreed principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, which is one of the founding principles of the Rio Conventions, is suddenly being contested in this regard and preventing progress on the decision on biodiversity and climate change. So in closing, Chair, we want to make it clear that the biggest compromise for us is to adopt a decision aimed at introducing and embedding the concept of nature-based solutions, despite the UNEA intergovernmental process being underway and the science warning us to proceed with caution in this regard. We strongly support the completion of the UNEA process, since it will guide us on the relationship between ecosystem-based approaches and nature-based solutions and how to implement these in the context of the convention. The current decision as it stands does not comprehensively address the topic of climate change and biodiversity in the context of the convention. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, South Africa. We have 6 parties to speak. I'm closing the list. and then we will move on to next steps. So Mexico, you have the floor, followed by Australia, then Indonesia. Mexico, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I won't come back to the arguments already presented, just to say that Mexico supports both Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Honduras, amongst others. Thank you.
Thank you, Mexico. We'll hear from Australia, followed by Indonesia, then Iran. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Australia supports the statement made by the United Kingdom and the position of Norway, Canada, the European Union and others on common but differentiated responsibilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Australia. May we hear from Indonesia, followed by Iran, and then the Philippines. Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Indonesia would like to support the positions of GRULACs and also African countries and supporting the principles of the CBDR. We think this principle is really important to differentiate countries based on the socio-economic responsibilities and respective capabilities, as well as our right to pursue national developments. We also think for us it will be the concept of nature-based solution is still we're still puzzling with this. We're still puzzled with this concept, and we would like to follow the agreed concept that has been discussed in the previous negotiations, which is an ecosystem-based approach. Indonesia is the second largest source for the global biodiversity, and with the current level ambitions, we really need the principle of CBDR to be reflected in relation to biodiversity and climate change. And we really hope that countries from other around this table will agree with these principles, and it will be the best way to find a common position for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Indonesia. We'll hear from Iran, followed by the Philippines, and then Uganda. Iran, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Iran also supports the proposal raised by GRULAC and African countries and also Indonesia. We came actually to compromise inserting nature-based solution with ecosystem-based approach. But we also need to recognize and respect the different circumstances of the parties. So that's why Iran also support CBDR, or common and differentiated responsibilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Iran. We'll now hear from the Philippines, followed by Uganda. The list is closed. We will not be accepting any more after Morocco and Sri Lanka. Thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Philippines also thanks the co-chairs for their hard work in cleaning up or achieving or trying to clean up this document, and we welcome this decision. The Philippines joins Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Honduras, Ethiopia, Uruguay, South Africa, Mexico, Indonesia in support for the CBDR in the text. We are not cherry-picking, but the inclusion of CBDR, the common but differentiated responsibilities, is the core of the biodiversity and climate change nexus. Like what Colombia said, if we could not find this in this text, then where would it be? We will be continually working in silos if we will not try to make the linkage of climate change and the principles of climate change and biodiversity conservation in this text. So we cannot accept this document without the CBDR in it. The principle is very explicit in the Rio Declaration, which is the rationale of the creation of the UNFCCC and the CBD. For all the reasons that we have already been mentioned, and for the interventions of the Philippines as expressed on the floor on regarding the nature-based solutions, with reference to the UNEA 5/5 resolution, we would like to see it retained on all parts of the text. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Philippines. Now I know Japan is having a problem with their mic. Is it that you're on Uganda's? Okay, Uganda. Okay, Japan. The next party has the floor. Is that you? Japan's mic seems to be working. Oh, it's working now. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning all. Japan would like to support the intervention made by Norway, Canada, EU, Switzerland, UK, and Australia regarding the CBDR. As mentioned previously, CBDR is not applicable to the Convention on Biological Biodiversity. Japan cannot accept the reference to CBDR in this document. Japan would like to also support to have the concept of nature-based solution in this document. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Japan. We're hearing from Morocco, Sri Lanka, and then Uganda will round us out. Thank you. Morocco?
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We support statements made by Ethiopia and several countries from Africa, and any strategy in the area of biodiversity or climate change needs to take into account the principle of common but differentiated responsibility. It will be the guarantee of implementation for our countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Morocco. I know Algeria is having problems with their mic, so we're going to get them while it seems to be working at the moment. So Algeria, you have the floor. Okay, try the next one to you. It's now open. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would like to support several developing countries' delegations regarding their comments for this decision. There is clearly an imbalance in the text that is presented. Our understanding is that we are going to examine the interlinkages between climate and biodiversity. Unfortunately, we have trouble to understand that interlinkage that we're supposed to know since several years ago. When it comes to nature-based solutions, we clearly understood that is the core of this decision. There is, for now, a process under UNEA to try to make this concept widely understandable and acceptable to all delegations. On the other hand, the issue of CBDR is a sine qua non condition for us to accept engaging in this decision. The principle is enshrined in the Rio principles that both CBD and UNFCCC are under. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Algeria. So we'll hear from Sri Lanka, then Uganda ends this list. Sri Lanka, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Sri Lanka also support to use of nature-based solutions and ecosystem-based approaches to climate change, adaptation, mitigation, and disaster risk reductions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Sri Lanka. And we have Uganda. Uganda, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Co-Chair. Uganda would like to support the position of South Africa made on behalf of the African group and emphasize the extent to which the principle of CBD is very, very important to our needs and circumstances at African level. And we would greatly take into consideration having that principle retained in the text. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Uganda. We have heard the views of parties. They are opposing from polar ends. We have extreme views, but we have to come together on this. It would be very sad to move forward without a decision on biodiversity and climate change. So we have to figure out what we can do to this draft decision to make it something that all parties can accept and move forward. Therefore, I'm going to give a little bit more time. We will form a small group. It will be facilitated by our champions, Rita and Sigador, to continue this work, but from a point of view of finding the compromise. We have shared our strong views, so let us come to this small informal group with how we are going to move forward. How we are going to move forward whereby we all have our needs met as far as possible, but still have a draft decision at the end, draft at this stage, at the end of the day, that we can accept. It is very important that we bring forth a biodiversity and climate change decision that we can all live with. It's not perfect, but it's what we have before us. Let us see what we can do. So therefore, I'm inviting a small group to meet. Other parties, of course, are always welcome to join. This small group would include parties such as Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, Ethiopia on behalf of Africa, South Africa, the EU, Switzerland, UK, Norway, Canada, Micronesia. Of course, other parties are welcome to join. You'll meet as a small group after this session is suspended. In the event that we end earlier, we will hope to have it right away. If not, it'll be this afternoon at 3 p.m. And we are fortunate to have Rita and Sigador anxious to help us to get to the stage where we bring forth a clean document that we can adopt at plenary with the President. I know that we're up to this task. At this point, we're at polar opposites, but we're coming together. So when we meet, we'll come together, figuring out what path, what that would look like. Because it doesn't help any of us to come from opposing views. It only helps if we can come together, figuring out what pathway we can take that we can live with, that we can present to the parties, that we can say, this is where we would like to present our decisions on biodiversity and climate change. I appreciate your spirit of compromise. I appreciate your flexibility and willingness to do something like this. And this is my way forward. Do I have any concerns about this method? I see no requests for the floor. Therefore, we will suspend this CRP 12. And I look forward to receiving a report from this group at the next session of the working group, which should be this evening at 7:30. Thank you very much for your willingness. We will now move forward to the CRP on biodiversity and health, but we first will need to listen to the report from the chairs of that group. I would then like to invite one of the co-chairs, I believe it's the one from Germany, to please present your report to the working group on your progress of your Friends of the Chair on biodiversity and health. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Friends of the Chair on agenda item 25 on biodiversity and health, which I had the pleasure to co-facilitate together with Andres Espinosa Rodes from Mexico, met on 14th December 2022 from 10 to 12:45 p.m. As co-facilitators, we reminded the parties about earlier deliberations from SBSTA on biodiversity and health, and we reiterated the mandate of the Friends of the Chair to focus on unresolved issues and to refrain from new text additions. Parties were also reminded that the main objective of this decision is to continue to work on a development on a global action plan for biodiversity and health, as agreed by parties in decision 14/4. Interventions were heard from 18 parties. One party had to leave the session earlier to attend a concomitant Friends of the Chair on the Nagoya Protocol. The group completed its work swiftly by considering the decision paragraph by paragraph, by addressing and resolving most of the bracketed text. The remaining brackets pertain to language on DSI and the reference to the principles of equity and solidarity. It is anticipated that these brackets will not be resolved in the CRP review stage, given ongoing negotiations on DSI. These issues are most likely expected to be resolved when the plenary will consider the L document. I sincerely wish to thank the group for their focused interventions, their spirit of compromise, and the willingness to agree on the way forward, as well as the Secretariat for their valuable and really excellent support. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This is my report to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to your co-chair, and we appreciate your hard work in bringing forth this draft decision to us. Thank you. So now we have CRP 10 before us. As indicated in the report, the main objective of the decision is to continue the work on the development on the Global Action Plan for Biodiversity Health as agreed by parties in Decision 14.4. There are editorial changes, and I'll ask the Secretariat to take the floor to explain them to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In preambular paragraphs, starting with noting resolution, the reference to the resolution adopted by the Human Rights Council should read as access to medicines, vaccines, and other health products in the context of, so there's an of missing, the right of everyone to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of, one of is missing, physical and mental health. The second editorial correction is in preambular paragraph starting with also noting the One Health Joint Plan of Action, and it should read the quadripartite for One Health instead of quadripartite alliance for One Health, to be consistent with the rest of the document. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. At this stage, the remaining brackets in this decision pertain to language on DSI and reference to principles of equity and solidarity. Given ongoing negotiations on DSI, I propose that we do not try to resolve these brackets when reviewing the CRP. I expect these brackets to be addressed when the plenary will consider the L document. So let us begin the review of this document. So please have before you CRP 10 on biodiversity and health. It begins with the conference of the parties, so I take that together with recalling decisions. I see no request for the floor. That preemptive paragraph is approved. Recalling the Sharm el-Sheikh declaration. I bring that before you. I see no request for the floor. Recalling the Sharm el-Sheikh para is approved. Just a minute. I think there's someone who's asking for the floor, but the mic is not working. Is that the case? Namibia, yes. Can you give Namibia the floor, please? Or the party next to you? The mic and the party next to you. Let's try that one. Okay, it seemed that whole bank of mics are not working, so maybe come to the mic in front. Apologies for these technical issues. Right, yes. So you may have to take the floor. Please give the party, it says Iraq, but it's Namibia, the floor. Yes, please, thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. So I would just like to say that Namibia did not have a chance to participate in the CG due to parallel session. sessions happened during the said time, and we had made a point of order that we reserve our right to speak on the text if we find any difficulties. We have found one important issue to be addressed in the text. This is the last preambular paragraph regarding the deletion of the words supported by Namibia during Substar 24 in Geneva. Therefore, we would like to see these words deleted to be brought back in the text. The text is as follows.
Just a minute, Namibia. I don't want you to move from that spot because your mic is not working, but when we get to that preambulatory paragraph, we can receive that text. Is that okay?
Okay.
Because we are not there yet.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so as far as I recall, we had approved the conference of parties, preambulatory paragraph, the recalling decisions, and recalling the Shamal Sheikh. We had approved that bit. So now we're on to note the preambulatory paragraph beginning noting resolution. And this would include the editorial corrections as the Secretariat had indicated. I see no request to the floor. That preambulatory paragraph is approved. Also noting resolution 5.6. I see no request to the floor. That preambulatory paragraph is approved. Taking note. I see no request to the floor. That is approved. So there we have to do that paragraph with the One Health, the quotation. The quote, begin with One Health. I see no request to the floor. That is approved. Noting that this definition, that preambulatory paragraph, I see no request to the floor. This is approved. Also noting, and this we have to take into consideration, the correction, the editorial correction made by the Secretariat. I see no request to the floor. That is approved. Looking at the preambulatory paragraph beginning with recognizing that. I see no request to the floor. That is approved. Recognizing also. I see no request to the floor. That is approved. Recognizing further. I see requests to the floor from Bolivia. Bolivia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam. Well, Bolivia also was not able to participate fully in the discussions of this decision because, well, of many overlapping sessions. And we think that it's important in this paragraph to add an additional wording in order to ensure that the One Health approach is fully implemented in the context of equity. So I suggest to introduce at the end of this paragraph also recognizing that One Health approach must ensure the equitable access to tools and technologies, including medicines and other health products required for addressing diseases and other health risks to people, animals, plants, and ecosystems. So in this regard, we think that this really is adding a qualifier that is really important for the implementation of the One Health approach, Madam. Thank you very much.
Would you please repeat, Bolivia? Thank you. Would you please repeat the last?
Also recognizes that One Health approach must ensure the equitable access to tools and technologies, including medicines and other health products required for addressing diseases and other health risks to people, animals, plants, and ecosystems.
Okay, so therefore, we'll ask the Secretary to read it out, please, and then we get what parties think about this introduction.
The addition would read as follows. Also recognizing, you said recognizing and then recognizes when rephrasing, but I think in this context it might be better to keep recognizing, so I will go with your first statement. So also recognizing that One Health approach must ensure the equitable access to tools and technologies, including medicines and other health products required for addressing diseases and other health risks to people, animals, plants, and ecosystems.
Thank you, Secretariat. So therefore, I'm putting forward the newly formulated preambulatory paragraph at the very top of page 2. I see Brazil. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We can support the proposal made by Bolivia. We'll just have two modifications to that proposal. After One Health approach, for us it would be important to include among other holistic approaches, and among the products they mentioned to include the vaccines also. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Let's hear it from the EU.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While Bolivia mentions important issues, we find that these are beyond the One Health approach.
Thank you, EU. I see the UK. UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And like the EU, these are important issues, but this is a substantive piece of text being introduced. Of course, it was unfortunate that Bolivia was unable to contribute to the contact group. Just a concern, I'm not quite sure how the One Health approach can ensure equitable access to tools and technologies and so on. That seems to us to be a wider issue, really. Not saying these issues aren't important, but we don't quite understand how this would work in practice. Thank you, Chair. So we would have reservations over how this is phrased. Thank you.
Thank you, UK. So here we are, looking at new text. Is there a way that we can move forward on this? Is there a way to find, so I have proposers, I have those against, so we have to find a compromise path, and what is that way? Any suggestions out there? Any party willing to come and help us figure out this way, what that way would be? Wow, I have two willing helpers. I see Switzerland followed by Malaysia. Switzerland, we hear from you first, and then Malaysia. Switzerland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I would like to see that I recognize the concern of the party who proposed this text. I would reserve also myself my real point of view on this text when I could really see it, because it's difficult with such a part of new text. My proposal would be, it's a question and a proposal. We have in the third paragraph noting resolution the question of the access with this resolution to vaccine and medical products. And I was wondering if we could make a link to this third paragraph with that. And maybe emphasizing the noting and making a link with the One Health approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Switzerland. Let's see. Thank you for that idea. Let's hear what how Bolivia feels about that suggestion. Bolivia?
Sorry, Madam, could you repeat what is the suggestion clearly so I can take into account, please?
Switzerland, can you share your idea with us, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Bolivia, for your question. I don't have a text because it's going very quickly, but my proposal was to add something about the One Health approach at the end of the third paragraph, beginning with noted resolution entitled The Human Right to a Clean, Healthy and Sustainable Environment, adopted, blah, 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 entitled Access to Medicine, Vaccine and Other Health Products in the Context of the Right of Everyone to the Enjoyment, etc. And I thought we might maybe add something to this paragraph to take into account the concern of Bolivia, instead of making a new piece of text completely. Thank you.
Bolivia? If you can, I can give you a few minutes to think if you want.
Thank you for the proposal, but I think, well, it cannot work because, well, the resolution is just a reflection on the resolution of the United Nations General Assembly, and we are referring here to the One Health approach. So the idea is clearly to connect the references to One Health approach precisely to the resolution of the access. So I think we need to really have a different way to address these issues. So for Bolivia, so this suggestion is not feasible, Madam. Sorry for this.
Okay, so we still have to think about what that would be, but let's hear from Malaysia, followed by the UK, and then we'll hear their ideas and move ahead. Malaysia, followed by the UK.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if I can help, but I would like to suggest that on the preambular paragraph on recognizing that COVID-19 pandemic, at the end of the paragraph where it states on the need to address inequities in global health, including with respect to equitable access to medicines, vaccines, diagnostics and medical equipment. Maybe if we can add something on the One Health approach, true One Health approach maybe. If that can help Bolivia.
Thank you, Malaysia. So while I see Bolivia is thinking on it, so let's hear from UK and then we can come back to them. Thank you so much, Malaysia. UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And like Malaysia, we were going to refer back to the paragraph but one above, which does seem to address a lot of the issues that, if not all of the issues raised and concerns raised by Bolivia, because it does talk about including with respect to equitable access to medicines, vaccines, diagnostics, and so on. It seems to me the only thing that might be missing from the paragraph above is, a broader reference to tools and technologies. So maybe it could say medicines, vaccines, diagnostics, tools and technologies and medical equipment, and that would seem to us to capture, I think, most of what Bolivia was concerned about, whether it's linked to a One Health approach or not, really. So I think that would be our preference as a way of addressing this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, UK. Let's hear from Brazil. Brazil.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Even though we would be happy to consider a new paragraph given the impossibility of Bolivia to take part on these conversations, we would not entertain the possibility of opening closed paragraphs to add the One Health approach. And by saying so, we also thank the colleagues for trying to find a way out of this, but that's not a possibility we would entertain. Thank you.
Bolivia, you had any thoughts on the matter, or you're still thinking? Okay, still thinking. Okay, so what we can do is we will park that for now. We're parking that very first preamble paragraph on page 2. while folks are thinking on how we can get resolution here, and we're going to move on to taking note of the 2019 Global Assessment Report. I see no request for the floor, so the wording of that appears to be okay, so taking note is approved. Emphasizing. I see no request for the floor. That is, okay, I see Peru.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We suggest that this paragraph begins like this, emphasizing the critical role of the genetic resources, derivatives, comma, including digital sequence information, comma, and traditional knowledge associated, and continues.
To clarify, you are replacing in any form by derivatives?
Derivatives. Yes.
So
resources, comma, derivatives, comma, including digital sequence information. Thank you.
So that, okay. Just to remind parties that that para on emphasizing the critical role with the brackets is a result of hours and hours of compromise. I would be hesitant to take anything additional for this, and I would ask nicely, Peru, would you, with that in mind, consider withdrawing that in particular at this point? But note that we are leaving this in brackets. Is this something that you're willing to? We are leaving the brackets here until there is resolution on the other side with DSI. Peru, you have the floor.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I think that we can lift the brackets from including digital sequence information and include the word derivatives. When you include any form can be material like genetic resources or derivatives, and information that is digital sequence information. So with these three words, three concepts, we could include all the kinds of genetic resources.
So as per our understanding, we will just, it's an added bracket, so it'd be in any form, and then another set of brackets, derivatives, and another bracket, including. Is that what I'm understanding your proposal is?
I suggest to keep out the brackets in including and in digital sequence information.
I would just note that many hours just to get here, to get all the brackets. So what the only thing I can add would be derivatives in brackets, so that all parties have their bits in here. That's what I can offer you, knowing that having in mind that once there's resolution on the DSI front, there would be resolution here, hopefully, at the L stage. Peru? Is that okay?
Okay, to include derivatives.
Yes,
in brackets.
in brackets.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I know that Namibia had to add something. Is it at this last preambulatory one? Because I don't know. I know your mic situation. Oh, it's working now. Okay, great. Namibia, we're going on. Okay, so sorry, just 1 minute. Give me a minute. So Emphasizing with all the brackets, including bracketed derivatives, is on the floor for approval. I see no request for the floor. I see a request for the floor. I don't see a request for the floor. Okay, it's back now. Okay, Switzerland, then Togo, right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm really sorry, but I'm very uncomfortable to touch this series of brackets that we discussed for a very long time. So I would not like to add some more brackets at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Switzerland. Let's hear from Korea, EU, and then Togo. No. Yeah. Korea.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Korea also would like to support the suggestion made by Switzerland because this document went through a lot of time, and Korea thinks it is not appropriate to include a new language here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So on behalf, it seems that many, and I see a list there, Peru, where we're asking you at this stage, and again, begging you at this stage. Is it possible to withdraw derivatives so that we can stay with our very carefully negotiated text here? Is this possible? Please. Peru?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I make this suggestion in order to be coherent with the Nagoya Protocol concepts. Thank you.
Let's hear from European Union and then Togo, EU.
Thank you. We just wanted to echo what was said by Switzerland and Republic of Korea. We are reluctant to touch this text.
Thank you, EU. May we hear from Togo, please?
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We do not wish to complicate this text, which has already been the subject of disagreement. However, we believe that this paragraph is linked to the third objective of the convention. Perhaps the word utilization has not been used here. It's not the genetic resources in and of themselves, but the use of those resources. And I think the reference to DSI is still relevant. Thank you.
Yes, the relevance. Thank you, Togo. So just to be clear on what you're saying, DSI is still in the paragraph. It is bracketed. I see utilization still in the paragraph. I guess I'm not clear on what your concern was. Can you please come back and let us know again, please? Thank you.
Oui, Madame.
Yes, Madam. I was speaking about the word use or utilization. There's a word missing, the critical role of the use of genetic resources, use or utilization. We have digital sequence information inter alia, or including digital sequence information, but we think the word use or utilization is missing from the paragraph. Thank you.
Switzerland, let's hear from you, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I will just recall what we said before about new text in this paragraph, but I will add something else. I will just remind the delegate from Togo that the utilization is mentioned at the fourth line, and research and development of health product and service are also utilization. And it's more precise the way it is than to put at the very beginning utilization. So I would be a bit uncomfortable to add what our colleague from Togo proposed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So here we are again. This para was well thoroughly discussed, and we came up with a delicate arrangement, and we have the 3 areas in brackets. I'm asking again, please, that parties not touch this so as to be able to have something that we can actually present. Is this, if not, we would have to spend more time renegotiating that particular paragraph. This is the issue at hand. We already have a previous para that we need to consider, and this is looking at this part with emphasizing the critical role. I'm asking if we can refrain for this particular paragraph from adding new text, bearing in mind the time that it was taken. However, I'm going to come back to that. So for now, we have that para part, and we have the para at the very top part. Now, moving on to noting ongoing efforts. We have this before you. Do we have any concerns? I know that there was one before. Namibia. Namibia?
Yes. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I don't know if I should also repeat the intervention that I had, just probably for clarity. Yes. Namibia did not have a chance to participate in the CG due to parallel sessions happened during the said time, and we had made a point of order that we reserve our right to speak on the text if we find any difficulties. We have found one important issue to be addressed in the text. This is the last preambular paragraph regarding the deletion of the words supported by Namibia during Substar 24 in Geneva. Therefore, we would like to see these words deleted to be brought back in the text. The text is as follows. Noting ongoing effort, read as it is, but after response, comma. This is the wording that we want to, or we propose to insert, as well as ongoing negotiations to amend to International Health Regulations 2005, and then the paragraph continues. Thank you, Madam Chair. If that is clear.
The Secretariat has it.
Thank you so much.
I want to hear other parties' views on this, please. Prior to giving the UK the floor, my intention is to go through the entire CRP, and those areas that we're parked, we'll come back to at the end, and at the end, people be given a little bit of time to come up with a way forward for those paras where we have sticky points. That is my proposed way forward for this CRP, please. I hope that's acceptable to you. So now we go back to that, noting ongoing efforts and the proposal by Namibia. So I see the UK ask for the floor. The UK, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. We don't have strong feelings about this text, but if it is going to be retained, we would prefer that it would read as well as ongoing negotiations on potential targeted amendments to the International Health Regulations 2005. So just to repeat that, as well as ongoing negotiations on potential targeted amendments to the International Health Regulations, etc., would be our preference there. Thank you, Chair.
Namibia, is this something that you can live with, that addition, or that amendment, or however you want to say it? Namibia, you have the floor.
Let me just, Madam Chair, we could just, if we can just be given a little time to reflect on it, and then we'll come back.
Thank you. I will move ahead. We're moving to para 1, encourages parties. So this is the preambulatory bit. I see no request to the floor. The preambulatory bit of para 1 is approved. Para 1A, to take actions. I see no request to the floor. Para 1A is approved. Para 1B, to further integrate. I see no request to the floor. Para 1B is approved. Para 1C, to further support. I see no request to the floor. Para 1C is approved. Para 1D, to strengthen compliance. I see no request to the floor. Para 1D is approved. So therefore, para 1 is approved. Para 2 invites the preambulatory bit only. I see Zimbabwe.
Chair, we think we can do away with what is in the brackets there. It was already mentioned in paragraph, I think paragraph 7, on the quadripartite. They comprise the World Health Organization, World Organization for Animal Health, and so forth. It has already been mentioned and qualified, so I think we can do away with that text.
Okay, so if I understand, you were saying for invites the quadripartite for One Health, and then you would take out what's in brackets since it's referred to on the first page in the first page in also noting the One Health joint plan, and it goes on. So the amendment would be to delete what's in the round brackets. Yes? Yes, that's what I understand. So therefore it would read, para 2 would read invites the quadripartite for One Health, comma, the One Health high-level expert panel. Zimbabwe?
That's it, Madam.
Okay, thank you. So this is before the floor, para 2? Not the whole para 2, sorry, just the preambulatory bit. Okay, I see no request to the floor. Para 2A. I see no request for the floor. Para 2A, as is approved. Para 2B, to contribute with guidance. I see no request for the floor. Para 2B is approved. Para 2C, to contribute to the development of. I see no request for the floor. Para 2C is approved. Para 2D, to collaborate with. I see no request for the floor. Para 2D is approved. So therefore, Para 2 in its entirety is approved. Para 3 invites the Global Environmental Facility. I see no request to the floor. Para 3 is approved. Para 4 invites parties, other governments. I see no request to the floor. Para 4 is approved. Para 5 requests the Executive Secretary, the preambulatory bit. I see there's a request for the floor from the UK. UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. So in this paragraph, there is a request to, in collaboration with the World Health Organization and the quadripartite for One Health, and that change was made in the group that met the other day. Just on reflecting on this, it does make it appear that the World Health Organization is separate from the quadripartite. And as we've just discussed a few paragraphs before, clearly they are a member, and it seems it might read better if it said something like, in collaboration with the World Health Organization and the other members of the quadripartite for One Health, just to emphasize that the World Health Organization is just one of the 4 members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, UK, for that editorial correction. So therefore, the third line of that preambulatory bit would be collaboration with the World Health Organization and the other parties, and the other members, sorry, of the quadripartite for One Health. I see EU, you have the floor.
Thank you. We prefer to keep the text as it is because the WHO is part of the quadripartite, but in this context, the quadripartite is meant as an entity in itself, so it would change slightly the meaning of it.
Thank you, EU. In that light, UK, are you able to withdraw your proposal?
Yes, Chair, but clearly as we look forward, of course, to collaboration with the World Health Organization and, of course, with the quadripartite as one kind of entity in its own right. But of course, there could be benefits to collaboration with the other members individually too. But if parties are not in favor of our suggested change, then we could withdraw it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for your flexibility. UK, let us hear from Brazil. Okay, yes, Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was just to support the EU on that, but I see that the UK has withdrawn its proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. So therefore, Para 5, the preambulatory bit, as before you, without any changes, is up for approval. I see no further requests for the floor. The preambulatory bit is approved. 5A, to produce an updated version. I see no requests to the floor. 5A is approved. 5B, to invite parties, other governments. I see no requests to the floor. 5B is approved. 5C, to make the outcomes. I see no requests to the floor. Para 5C is approved. So Para 5 is approved in its entirety. So let's go back to the sticky points. There are 3 areas. So let's do that last preambulatory paragraph, noting ongoing efforts. And Namibia can come back now and let us know what their thoughts are about the suggestion. Okay, thank you. Namibia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to come back to say that we agree with what was proposed by UK. Thank you so much, and thank you, UK, for...
Thank you, Namibia. Thank you, UK. So let's read that out so that we know what it says, so we know what we are approving. I'll ask the Secretary to read it for me, please. Thank you.
So the paragraph would read as follows. Noting ongoing efforts to draft and negotiate a World Health Organization convention, agreement, or other international instrument to strengthen pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response, as well as ongoing negotiations on potential targeted amendments to the International Health Regulations 2005, and the need to be consistent with and not run counter to the objective of the convention and its protocols.
So therefore, I put before you the new version of noting ongoing. I see no request to the floor. That new version is approved. Sorry, I see Brazil has asked for the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We need a minute to consult on this new insertion. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So let us then, okay, so we need to deal with the recognizing for the para and the preamble para and the emphasizing the critical role. So let me get a list of the small huddles we're going to form to deal with those issues so we can come with resolution text. And we will be getting 20 minutes, but let's just see who those parties will be. Give me a minute to consult, please. Thank you. Okay, so this for the recognizing for the para, preamble para at the very top on page 2. The parties we are kindly asking to just huddle together would be Bolivia, Brazil, EU, UK, Malaysia, and Switzerland. And then for the emphasizing the critical role that delicately negotiated text, I would ask Togo, Peru, EU, Switzerland, and Korea. Of course, other parties may join. So therefore, may I give you 20 minutes to come back to me with resolution text, please? Thank you for willingly saying yes, no problem. Thank you very much. So therefore, we will begin the 20-minute countdown. So you may form your huddles. Begin. Okay, thank you so much for your patience and flexibility. Hello. Just listen to me for 1 second, and I apologize. We're all very tired, so all of us are very tired. For 2A, I missed it. That para with the principles of equity and solidarity. We are still trying to find a resolution for that, so unfortunately I have to reopen 2A, and I would like to ask if parties are willing to meet on this. May I ask Tanzania, EU, Namibia, Japan, and Brazil to meet on this, if possible? Is this possible? 2A, the bracketed area of the principles of equity and solidarity. I will restart your 20 minutes. I apologize for this. The principles of equity and solidarity to work out that. So Japan, Brazil, Namibia, Tanzania, and EU, please. I beg your indulgence. Thank you. We will restart the 20 minutes. So we have 3 groups. Thank you.
可是现在已经小学生，这种东西听多了就实在是，哦天哪！你们做法律的太了不起了。
他这边现在这些讲的也不见得都是念法律的。
Thank you. Thank you very much for taking your time, the time to do this work. We will first start by considering the para on emphasizing the critical role. Can one of the parties come back to me to indicate how it went, please? And your text to move forward, please. Thank you. So I anxiously await the parties who met on the preamble para of emphasizing the critical role. So one of the parties, may you introduce the resolved text, please. I see the EU. You have the floor.
We agreed on leaving the text as it is with the 3 brackets. So thank you, Peru, for your flexibility on this.
Thank you. So therefore, the preamble para, which says emphasizing the critical role, will remain as is before you. That preamble para is approved. Thank you. Greatly appreciate your flexibility, parties. Now looking at the very one at the top, the very first one at the top of the page, page 2, recognizing further. I anxiously await the resolved text. May one of the parties who was in this group present. UK, I see you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. We had a productive discussion amongst the group that gathered there, and everyone was flexible in trying to come to some form of wording that was acceptable to all. So we do have some text, and it goes, I will read it out slowly a couple of times, but it would read, it would be after health and well-being for all, comma, also recognizing the need for the equitable access to tools and technologies, including medicines, comma, vaccines, and other health products required to implement the One Health approach and other holistic approaches. And that was a text that seemed to work for everybody. I can read it one more time if that would help. Yes, Chair? So, again, the inserted text would be also recognizing the need for the equitable access to tools and technologies, including medicines, comma, vaccines, and other health products required to implement the One Health approach and other holistic approaches. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, UK. Thank you, the group. So therefore, the newly formulated text for recognizing further the preamble paragraph is before the parties, before the working group. I see no request for the floor. Therefore, the reformulated text for recognizing further is approved. Thank you. So coming back to that last one, the noting ongoing efforts. I know Brazil still had to consult. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Co-Chair, and thank you for the colleagues for this opportunity. I regret, Madam Co-Chair, but this was not foreseen and I'm still in difficulties in getting people to react to this comment. If you could please keep in brackets. I hope that by the end of our discussions, I'll have an answer for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. So therefore, we go to 2A. 2A, that bracketed bit on the principles of equity and solidarity. I see Brazil. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. I'm pleased to inform that after consultations, we would suggest as well as equity and solidarity at the end of A, and you drop the words "the principles of." So it would read at the end of this paragraph 2A, as well as equity and solidarity. And I'm grateful for the commitment and the compromise of the others. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. I see Switzerland. You asked for the floor. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I thank very much the Brazil for their consensus text. And as far as we are concerned, it will be okay for us to go along with this proposal and to suppress the world principle. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate flexibility and air of compromise in the room. So therefore, I bring before you the newly formulated 2A. I see no request for the floor. Therefore, 2A is approved in the new formulation. Thank you very much. So therefore, the only bit is that area with above noting where Brazil has to get back to us on that. Therefore, I will suspend this one. So everything is agreed except that preambulatory bit where we had Namibia and the UK provide compromise text. So we'll wait Brazil for that. So everything is approved except that bit on noting ongoing. Just a minute, please. So therefore, we will proceed. In the schedule, we were to do the next item, which would have been item 16, the multi-year program of work. But if you permit me to open, in the interest of time, to open item 15 on specialized international access. The reason is to start, at least open up the huddle on the discussions of para 5 and 6. That's my rationale. If that's okay with parties, please let me know. It seems okay. So therefore, we will begin by hearing the report from the group who met to discuss this non-paper. So therefore, I'll ask them to take the floor. I believe it's Germany will take the floor. Okay, yes. EU, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it's the EU. The Friends of the Chair on COP MOP 4, Agenda Item 15, on specialized international access and benefit sharing instruments in the context of Article 4, Paragraph 4 of the Nagoya Protocol, co-facilitated by myself and Patience Gandiwa from Zimbabwe, met twice, on 14 December 2022 from 10 to 11 a.m. and on 15 December from 3 to 5 p.m. At our first session, the co-facilitators reminded parties about earlier deliberations from SBI 2, COP MOP 3, and SBI 3, and asked parties to reflect on their expectations for this agenda item and the use of the indicative criteria as contained in the annex. The group expressed general support for the text of the SBI recommendation, with the exception of paragraphs 5 and 6, concerning a process to assess and determine the status of instruments as specialized international access and benefit sharing instruments in the context of Article 4 of the protocol. We heard some concerns regarding the risk of creating hierarchy between international instruments and on the risk of fragmentation of the global regime on access and benefit sharing. We heard also about the need to ensure mutual supportiveness and consistency with the Nagoya Protocol. Based on this initial round of reflections, we prepared a non-paper and introduced some improvements to the text of the SBI recommendation in view of finding a compromise and addressing the issues raised at our next session. Our work focused on the draft decision, and the annex was not discussed. At our second session, the group considered the non-paper, and while it was well received by some, we were unable to make any progress on the document. There was a clear divide in the room regarding a possible process to consider and statute on what constitutes a specialized international access and benefit sharing instrument in the context of Article 4 of the Nagoya Protocol, as contained in the annex of paragraphs 5 and 6 of the non-paper. The room exchanged views back and forth, and some proposals on a way forward were made, but not accepted. The group also invited a legal opinion from the Secretariat. We were effectively at an impasse, and the group itself agreed on the impossibility to reconcile the divergent views and to reach a consensus on this agenda item. Some parties proposed not to have a decision at this fourth meeting of the COP-MOP on this agenda item, and the proposal seemed to be supported by the group. The group indeed agreed that no CRP would be submitted to the working group as a result of the Friends of the Chair. In closing, my co-facilitator, I express our thanks to you, Madam Chair, in trusting us with the mandate of facilitating this discussion. I also thank the parties that participated to the Friends of the Chair for their effort, and deeply regret to inform you that no consensus was reached. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your great efforts, yourself and your co-facilitator. It is greatly appreciated. As you have heard back in this report from the co-facilitators of the Friends of the Chair, the group unfortunately did not succeed in finding consensus on the non-paper prepared by the co-facilitators. Therefore, no document has been submitted to the working group for this agenda item. Colleagues, the initial mandate to consider criteria and possible process to recognize specialized international access and benefit sharing instruments emerged from COP-MOP 2 held in Cancun, and since has been considered by 2 subsidiary body meetings and by COP-MOP 3 as well. Parties have invested a lot of work and time in discussing this matter, and it'd be very unfortunate to close this meeting without any discussion under this agenda item. I'd like to urge parties to find an agreement so that we can have a decision on this agenda item. In this context, and with your indulgence, I would like to propose a final attempt to reach consensus. I call on the following parties to form a huddle to discuss and try and find a compromise on the draft decision. These countries would include Brazil, the EU, Malawi, Mexico, Switzerland, the Republic of Korea, and the United Kingdom. Of course, other parties are welcome, and we leave it up to this group to decide on what text to use as a basis. It will be lunchtime soon, so we will consider this as your lunchtime work, and you can use this room in here because it will not be occupied during the lunchtime period. So therefore, I ask if this is an acceptable approach. I see Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Co-Chair. Brazil deeply regrets this situation that we're facing. We do understand that the divergence among parties in this issue, but I want to make two comments on this and on what your suggestion. Madam Co-Chair, several of parties here are delegations here are not actually representing dozens of parties. So we need to be fully aware of the people power in the sense to be present in very different meetings. We're reaching a very critical moment of CBD with intense informal negotiations on the most priority issue of this COP, that is the GBF. And I apologize, but at this stage, there is no, I don't have, my delegation could not count with more delegates to be participating in several ongoing informal. It's a burden that my delegation will not be willing to accept. And I'm seeing that there is this constant change in the agenda of the session. And I've seen, for example, that you have the climate change working group again for a third time, and where, again, I think just as the Nagoya, there is an absolute evidence of the lack of consensus whatsoever on that document. So I have a proposal to do for you in the spirit of compromise and focusing on what's important to focus, that is the GBF. So could you please report to the plenary that there was no consensus on this issue and there was no consensus on climate change? There is no time any longer to continue discussions on these issues. Let's simply report this, what is a fact. And it would be very difficult to continue discussions on I would say, small issues compared to the preeminence of the GBF. And I make an appeal, and I made this several times, and I'm doing this again, an appeal to the chairs, and I'm referring to you, Madam Chair, and the Madam Chair of Working Group 1, the facilitators, the chairs of the contact group, to please focus and prioritize GBF. If you have agreement on other decisions, but you don't have an agreement on GBF, this COP will be a failure. And it's your responsibilities as chairs to be aware of that, to recognize the limits of the negotiations, to recognize the limits of the delegations, to be present and be present in several rooms at the same time. And I will stress this fact once again, that it's very difficult to be in different rooms at the same time with ongoing discussions. There are several different issues that delegates need to follow. It's really difficult to simply turn to someone in your delegation and say, hey, you never discussed this, but please go inside that room. It's a critical moment to discuss this a specific paragraph that you have no idea wherever it's come from, and you never work with that issue. And it's not fair also in this sense. So I think the most reasonable, responsible thing to do based on equity and solidarity would be to concentrate our efforts on what matters, and what matters is the GBF. And I recalled you that several times I would say that this is acting responsibly also, doing the commitments that the world expects from us, and the world is watching us. So I have this suggestion for you. I hope that's acceptable. Let's start taking issues out from our agenda. We need to concentrate on the GBF. There are a lot of brackets in that GBF. So let's start taking issues out. And I recommend that since there are no agreements in the entire issue of this specialized international assets and benefit sharing instruments, and there is no agreement whatsoever either on climate, the entire decision is on brackets, I urge you to please report the plenary there is no consensus and discussions on these issues are over. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Let's hear from other parties. I see Namibia, followed by North Macedonia. Namibia.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to a large extent I agree with my colleague from Brazil. However, we would propose that the way forward with this is simply to agree that we cannot prioritize the time needed to come to a solution and keep this item on the agenda and move it forward to MOP5. This is an important issue. It was raised originally in Cancun, specifically in the context of discussions about access to pathogens that was starting at that time. There is now, after the pandemic, a renewed interest in that whole issue, ongoing discussions at the WHO, and it would have been great if we could come to a conclusion here. But I agree with Brazil that it's not a top priority at the moment, and we would like to just take the text that we have at the moment and insert a paragraph before that saying we believe this is an important conversation to continue, and we agree to discuss this further at MOP5. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Namibia. Let us hear from Bolivia, followed by the Republic of Korea. Bolivia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Well, I fully agree with the statement made by Brazil. I think we are going into the very final and critical moment of this negotiation. We need to prioritize and to concentrate our attention in the key areas. In particular, well, the global biodiversity framework is one of the key outcomes of this COP. For Bolivia, one-person delegation is very difficult to participate in all the informal processes. And that's why we are reopening items that have been discussed in other consultations, and this will be really a problem. And I fully agree that if there is no agreement and there are clearly a very distinctive views in very critical issues, we should move those issues to the plenary. So trying to reopen again informal consultations like in the climate change decision is very complicated because, well, my delegation will reopen again those issues in this setting. So I agree fully with, as Brazil said, we need to move forward and to prioritize. Thank you.
Thank you, Bolivia. Let us hear from Republic of Korea, followed by Argentina, and then Mexico. I am closing the list, and then we look at next steps. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Korea shared the observations that GBF deserves the paramount importance. And Korea also would like to appreciate the hard work in trying to find a common understanding of this thorny issue. And Korea further understands the concerns raised by the previous speakers. Korea is not a big proponent of the proliferation or fragmentation of ABS regime. However, Korea would like to remind us that we are not here to negotiate over this issue, the relationship between the Nagoya Protocol and other specialized ABS instruments, such as IT-PGR-FA or future WHO ABS instrument. It should be reminded that we already handled this issue about 12 years ago in Nagoya, Japan, and cautiously and meticulously produced Article 4 in Nagoya Protocol, which is enshrined explicitly in the text of Nagoya Protocol. Nevertheless, Korea suggested and other parties suggest a new alternative text as a compromise, such as inputs of a compliance committee to accommodate the unfounded concerns of some parties despite the empty hands of the other side. Korea hopes that we could find a common understanding in a more diligent manner from now on. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Korea. We'll hear from Argentina, followed by Mexico. Argentina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We agree with Brazil and Namibia and others that we are in a final stage of COP and too many issues are going on at the same time. So we have to come to the realization of what's the amount of work that we can finalize here and what has to continue being discussing. And in that regard, we retain this agenda item very important. And we think, as Namibia said, that this is something to be solved, but maybe is something to be solved at MOP 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. We will hear from Mexico, followed by Malawi, then Norway. Mexico, the floor is yours. Mexico, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. We see a document here which we think that at this time does not address the concerns that were expressed in the past, and we appreciate also the efforts undertaken to do this work, but also we support and urge our colleagues from Brazil, Argentina, Brazil, Bolivia, and Namibia to have time. We need time to consider this, so we support that idea. We don't think we can do this at this time, and we think we should postpone it for the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Malawi. Thank you, Mexico. We'll hear from Malawi, followed by UK, EU, and then Uruguay. The list is closed, and then I'll speak to you the next steps, please. Malawi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just like others, for us, this topic is very important, and we were really hoping we could find some consensus at this COP. However, we agree with Brazil and Namibia and what others have said, that we do not have enough time at this COP, and therefore we agree with what Namibia proposed, to have it considered at the next MOP. So we agree that we can move on and move it to the next MOP. We do not have enough time. Thank you.
Thank you, Malawi. Let's hear from the UK, followed by the EU, then Uruguay. UK?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Parties spent significant time yesterday trying to find a way forward, but unfortunately it was not possible at that time to find middle ground. We fully understand the issues raised by previous speakers, including the short time that we have left to address the GBF. And although specialised international instruments is a very important topic for the UK, particularly with regard to public health emergencies, we do support the proposal by Namibia to put this item on hold and to come back to it at the next COP-MOP. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, UK. We'll hear from EU, then finally Uruguay. EU, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of the European Union and its member states. We would like to express our appreciation to the Secretariat and to the co-facilitators of the group for their efforts in trying to steering the group towards a compromise and consensus. We regret that this was not possible due to lack of flexibility. We believe the non-paper that has been submitted was a good basis for further discussion, so we regret that we could not work on it further, but under the given circumstances we agree with others who are suggesting postponing this agenda item until the next COP-MOP due to the reasons that we have already heard from others. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, EU. Then we have Uruguay. Uruguay, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. We also join the voices of the small delegations. In my case, I'm one of them. And we believe that we don't have very much time to address these issues. We, too, would like to prioritize what has to do with the global framework. So we think it's good to postpone this to the next MOP. Thank you.
Thank you, Uruguay. There's another party wanting the floor, but their mic wasn't working. So let's get the next available mic that's working. No? Yes. I see Argentina's asked for the floor while we sort out the mic issue on this side. Argentina, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We would like to seek also clarification on the way forward on climate change. That was another suggestion by Brazil, and we also think that a lot of time has been invested here, and there are several differences that seem difficult to bridge. So we wonder how the group that you are convening will work on that regard, and whether or not it's necessary to have that meeting or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. So we will raise that when we have finished this one. Thank you for reminding me. So therefore, we now have Norway, and then India, and then this list is closed. Thank you. Norway, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. There was a bit of a misunderstanding on the sort of the when the various items came, and also our mic didn't work, so I'm sorry about that. We'd like to come back to the issue regarding the climate, but just to say here that Norway can support the postponing the discussion around item 15. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any requests for the floor at this time. So therefore, the parties have clearly spoken. Thank you. So therefore, I've prepared a simple CRP, which would take into account your concerns. So I'll read it now at dictation speed, and you will let me know if this is the way forward. It begins, noting the divergence of views among parties with regards to specialized international access and benefit sharing instruments in the context of Article 4 of Nagoya Protocol. Para 1 takes note of the recommendation 3/16 that the subsidiary body on implementation made at its third meeting on specialized international access and benefit sharing instruments in the context of Article 4, Paragraph 4 of the Nagoya Protocol. 2, decides to further review the item on the basis of recommendation 3/16 referred to above at its 5th meeting. Do you need me to read it again? It does not appear so. Is this an acceptable way to move forward? I see Brazil.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair, with the understanding that you're going to do the same with climate. Thank you.
Can we deal with this and then we work on climate? Is that okay? Can you give Brazil the floor, please? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. I failed to understand the rationale behind treating differently two issues. I think that's very clear. The majority of the delegates that spoke make it very clear that also there would be no consensus whatsoever achievable under climate change, because some parties here are willing to deny their obligations under international law. And developing parties, and I cannot speak on behalf of all developing parties, but I can speak on behalf of Brazil. This is not under negotiation. And I don't see the point of promoting a further round of discussions on climate change when several developed parties have made clear they are not ready to accept that commitments. And Brazil and other developing countries in the meeting, when you left the last meeting with the entire draft decision in brackets, and that's the decision, the entire decisions in brackets, we made very clear that's non-negotiable. So I don't see your point in insisting with a further round of discussions on the same circumstances when the divergence is not possible to be bridged. And I really fail to rationale to treat differently issues that are very similar in this sense. So my understanding, for the sake of coherence, is that we would treat both issues in the same way. And the decision on climate change would go on those lines, that you simply take note of previous decision or whatever and consider to keep this on the agenda for the next agenda item. And you will be relieved the burden on delegates on continued discussion these issues. Because let's be clear, Madam Co-Chair, those who were there in the first round of discussions on climate change and the last round of climate change yesterday, it's very clear there will be no consensus on this issue. So I'm begging you to please release us from this burden and let's move forward and concentrate our efforts on the priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Can I hear the thoughts of parties regarding taking this together? I would, however, ask if we can please finish this one and then we can move immediately to speaking to climate change. Is that at all possible? Can we just finish this one and then move immediately, asking parties thoughts? Because then we could close this one and bring it back this evening as a CRP for a presentation to the group. Is that okay? And then we immediately move to climate change. So I could close this one. Is this okay? Just want to close this and we immediately speak about climate change. Yes, I'm seeing nodding. I see Korea. You want to take the floor. Korea, please take the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Even though we could not find a common understanding of the Article 4 within our protocol, I'm happy to say that we could find a consensus on postponing this item to next meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Korea. So before you, you have the new CRP, as I've read out, which I just need to know, may I post this so you can read it? You have over lunch to read it, and then we reconvene again to take it up tonight. Is that acceptable because of the time? Yes. Okay, thank you. So this is closed, and we will see the CRP submitted online. Okay, so now let's talk about the climate change issue. So Brazil and Argentina, and I think maybe, I'm not sure if others, they would like to do a similar method with climate change, with the biodiversity and climate change. So instead of having the next session to try and get resolution, it's proposed that we do something similar, which would be deferring it. I want to hear parties' views on this. Please, raise your flag, press your button. I would need to hear your party's views on this. I see Ethiopia, followed by Norway, and then Bolivia. Ethiopia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ethiopia is speaking on behalf of the African group, representing 55 countries as a co-leader, co-negotiator. We share the concern of Brazil and Argentina. We have spent a lot of time with the previous sessions, but we couldn't reach into agreement. So we share the idea of Brazil and Argentina. Thank you.
Thank you. May we hear from Norway, followed by Bolivia, then Uruguay. Norway, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We agree on the importance of this resolution. We have spent a lot of time discussing already. It has been very complicated to find a compromise. We were actually just in the hallway now, as we were asked to come back, trying to find language that could reach some sort of compromise that could enable us to take this further. We note with regret that Brazil and partner countries are no longer interested in negotiating further on this. We think it could be worth giving it another try, so we are here and we are willing to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, Norway. Let's hear from Bolivia, followed by Uruguay and then EU. Bolivia, let's hear from you, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. We fully agree with the proposal to defer this discussion for the future and to close this, the negotiation in this decision in this COP. Well, and also there are reasons that, well, we fully have a different understanding of this process because, well, Bolivia also agrees that, well, we cannot negotiate issues of the international climate regime under the CBD, and therefore we are not able to agree in critical and to change and to reinterpret critical principles and essential principles under the UNFCCC in this context. So we are not able to agree in those issues now. We don't have time to discuss those issues. I need to prioritize the global biodiversity framework, Chair, so I fully support to defer and plead you to defer this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Bolivia. Let's hear from Uruguay, followed by EU, and then Brazil again. Yes.
Gracias, Presidente.
Thank you, Chair. First, I'd like to say that for Uruguay, The synergies between climate change and biodiversity is a very relevant topic, and we're working on it on an ongoing basis, but we understand that many prior decisions of the Convention on Biodiversity make it difficult to make progress in this area, including to have a decision in this COP. And we understand that we need more time in order to address this new draft decision. So we accompany the initial position of Brazil and Argentina on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's hear from the EU, followed by Brazil, and then last, Malaysia. EU, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As already expressed in the morning, EU and its member states, we think that this is a very important decision, and we have worked a lot on it. We have diverging views still on a number of issues, which, as we have said also in the meetings, which are horizontal issues and are also addressed in several other items that are being discussed right at the moment by our ministers. So we would like to get the result of these discussions, and with these results, we think an adoption of this decision on biodiversity and climate change should still be within reach. We fully align with what has been said by Norway, and we plea you to give it another chance, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. Let's hear from Brazil, then Malaysia, then United Kingdom. End of the list. Thank you. Brazil.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. No, just to come back, that I deeply regret the statement by Norway, because my delegation believes and understands, as delegation of Bolivia has said, that climate is an issue to be dealt with under UNFCCC. And unfortunately, there is this pressure to discuss this issue here, and we never discuss this issue here. So it wasn't the agenda, it's been an agenda, you're willing to consider it. Regrettably, what you've seen is an attempt from developed parties to bring issues that are alien to this convention, outside of the scope of this convention, and to this convention. And not only that, but they cannot accept they want to talk about climate, denying their commitments and agreed language under UNFCCC. So the reason there is no consensus on this agenda, on this item, is that countries like Norway, for example, cannot even accept to recognize commitments that Norway have under UNFCCC. And it really surprised me to hear the Norwegian delegate asking Brazil for flexibility. I would ask much less than flexibility from others, much less than flexibility. I would just request to negotiate in good faith under the commitments they have under international law. So you've heard, Madam Co-Chair, the majority of parties have spoken, and the majority of parties that have the prioritization of the GPF, I think the argument from the delegate of the EU is very dangerous. It's very dangerous because you make hostage entire issues of our agenda because of how ongoing negotiations on GBF would go. So the result of that will actually have an installment on everything, because everything will be stopped waiting for a GBF to come with a magical solution, and GBF negotiations would be extremely more difficult because there would be these alien issues from outside the convention that some parties would to bring. So, well, Madam Co-Chair, I think it's very clear now that there is absolutely no reason to continue discussing this agenda item, and I'm confident that you recognize that and treat fairly with equity and making the same judgment that you had in the previous agenda item to this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Let's hear from Malaysia, from the UK. Malaysia, you have the floor.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Malaysia would like to express our caution on this. We could defer this paper to COP16, but what about target 8 under GBF? Would that target be struck out because the same language are in that target 8? So, yeah, that is our concern. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Malaysia. Let's hear from the UK. UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair.
all parties have said that this is a really important decision addressing the interlinkages between climate change and biodiversity, and we don't feel that this is a similar issue to that of the Nagoya item on SII. The work of that item can continue without this decision. To keep it brief, we support the points raised by the EU and Norway. Thank you.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing is that we have parties who want to engage in further discussions and parties who do not want to engage in further discussions on this. For us to proceed with a group, a small informal group, we need all parties to engage. This is my grave concern. If we cannot get all parties to be part of it, it is difficult for us to move forward on this. I'm hearing that parties here right now are unwilling or unable, due to many obligations, to be able to participate in engaging in discussions further on this, as we have asked to meet in the next session, another session. So I'm very, very concerned, because I don't think we can continue a discussion if all parties are not engaged, because then all parties are not part of it, and we operate on the basis of consensus. This is what I understand this convention to do. We operate, all parties have to be part of the process. If parties are indicating at this stage that they're not willing to engage because they're not able to, for a variety of reasons, they want to concentrate in GBF, it's very difficult for us to have this small group. It is very difficult for us to solve. I understand that some parties are willing to go ahead and try and negotiate and try and have that time to do that, but I'm very concerned about not having everybody engaging in this process, which to me is a big deal. It's very important, because how can we move forward without that consensus? Anyway, we will then not have this meeting at 3, and then we will let you know what that will look like, the future, the way forward for this evening, as soon as we open the 7:30 meeting, because you know we have other areas that we have to finish. We have our multi-year program of work, and we have to just that last thing on global multi-benefit sharing, and we still have our working group report to do. So thank you for sharing your frank concerns. Thank you for sharing them. We want to make sure that this is a party-led process. We want to make sure that people are able to engage. So therefore, we will let you know what that looks like, how that looks, this evening at our 7:30 meeting, but then therefore we will not be able to have our 3 o'clock, where we're planning to do further discussions, because if parties cannot engage, and they've clearly said so, several parties have said they cannot engage, I'm not sure how we could further move forward on that. So therefore, I see Brazil. Brazil, you asked for the floor.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. First, a small correction. The issue is not ready to engage. We've been engaged a lot. We've been offering lots of bridging proposals to reach compromise language, that including language that was agreed during UNFCCC COP27. And so I just to clarify, to correct you in the sense that it's not about engaging, it's about participation. And I understand what you said, but at this moment, I'm deeply regretting the lack of fairness and equity that you consider in the issues on the table. Deeply regret that, because I accepted the decision on the Nagoya, on the previous item, with the understanding, as I said, that the same treatment would be given to climate. And we heard several parties saying the same. The majority of parties said the same. So I deeply regret this lack of fairness and inclusive way that things are being managed. I fail to understand why majority of parties must be kept hostage by a small few. Why the most biodiversity parties, those that host the most biodiversity in the world, must be kept hostage and be impeded to participate in the discussion of the GBF by the minority few. And I want this to be registered this in the plenary. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. It disappoints me that you feel that way. I intend always to be fair to the parties. It's not that, and we are not having any further discussions. The 3 o'clock is not anymore. This evening, you will see what it looks like, because I can't draft on, we don't have a draft to give you as yet to see what that would look like. And so therefore we try to be fair. We try to engage with all parties. Please know that. Please know that we do not try to be one-sided. We try to be balanced. We do our best to do that. I am not holding you hostage. We are meeting. We have to meet this evening at 7:30 because we are not finished all of our items, which we need to finish before we can actually close the working group. So therefore it doesn't have to be opened again to take up even more time from the GBF. We need to finish all the working group tonight, so we don't have anything further into the future. We will see that. You will see that. Well, in my mind, I'm being as balanced as I can. Please know that. Please know I'm not holding you hostage. Please know that. We will see what that new CRP will look like for climate tonight. I don't ever intend to hold anyone hostage. And just know that so tonight we will continue with our multi-year program. Well, we first finish addressing climate change. We will not have that 3 o'clock meeting because parties are unable to participate in that, and that is very clear, and we will not have that. And we will see how we proceed. But we have to do our multi-year program and our global multi-benefit sharing. But it's very clear, noted about your concern and the deferment. That's very well noted. So please know I'm not holding you hostage, and we will see each other tonight at 7:30. But thank you for your flexibility. Thank you for sharing your frank discussions. I appreciate when parties can be open and honest and share their concerns with us, and we get it out in the open, and then we can then meet again this evening to reconvene on this. Please give me a little time to prepare what that looks like. Thank you. I see Brazil. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you for your explanation, Madam Co-Chair. Not on this issue, but regarding the health, may I?
Yes, sorry. Yes, you may go ahead.
Thank you, and I apologize for not reacting quickly to this issue. Brazil could accept the amendment on the PP, but not with the word targeted. So it would read as well as ongoing negotiations on potential amendments. I hope that's acceptable. Thank you.
So therefore, the last thing before we close this session of the working group, please permit me to go back to Biodiversity of Health and present that last preambulatory paragraph above para 1, which talks about noting ongoing efforts to draft and negotiate a World Health Organization convention, agreement or other international instrument to strengthen pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response, as well as ongoing negotiations on potential amendments in National Health Regulation 2005, and the need to be consistent with and to not run counter to the objectives of the convention and its protocols. This is the amended version as read. I see no request to the floor, so therefore that preambulatory paragraph is approved, and therefore CRP 10 is approved. Thank you for your willingness to be flexible, and we will now prepare an L document for that to be presented to COP. So CRPL is approved. Thank you. So thank you for your patience. We will reconvene at 7:30, starting with climate change, then the multi-year program of work, then the global multilateral benefit sharing mechanism. Yes, and then the working group 2 report, not holding you hostage. Okay, thank you very much. Have a good afternoon. The session is ended.